Rebecca Costa's on the line. She's my guest, sociobiologist. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I used to carry your show. We loved your show. You went off the radio, so we miss you. We hope you come back. You know, I loved your insight on everything current in the world. And now we're dealing with COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, probably one of the dumbest slogans I've ever heard. But for manipulative purposes, it works for the left and the elite. You know, I competed against a company called The Professionals at one time. I'm like, what a great name. I mean, how could you not want The Professionals? How could you not be for Black Lives Matter, right? Are you not for Black Lives Matter? Then you must be a racist. What the heck is going on in this country, Rebecca?
Well, those are in the advertising and marketing world, we call those memory hooks. And anytime, sometimes you have a jingle that you can't get out of your head. Sometimes you hear a phrase and it sticks with you. Well, when advertisers are trying to introduce new products or get you to buy new products, they're always looking for these memory hooks. And they're very important. And Black Lives Matter is a good memory hook.
Black Lives Matter. We have an organization here that wants to distance themselves from the Black Lives Matter George Soros organization. And I've been trying to think of a name for them so they can distance themselves. But, I mean, how can you beat Black Lives Matter? And then how can Black Lives Matter coincide now with taking advantage of not only the unlawful death of an individual from an alleged police officer and then COVID-19?
Well, there's a lot of people that are at home right now that are stunned that people are out in the street side by side marching in the middle of a pandemic. And, we're trying to figure out, well, they're not social distancing, so what the heck is going on? Why would they? I mean, are they not aware of the fact that this virus can go airborne and that, we can make thousands and thousands more contagious by this kind of activity? And so, I'm a scientist by training, so I tend to look at this and say, well, is there any precedence for this? And if I hear people in the media one more time saying this is unprecedented, I think I'm going to throw a shoe at my television. It's not unprecedented at all. If you go back in history, which can all be verified by people that want to get on the internet, at the conclusion of the Spanish flu, which lasted, well, let's say between 1918 and 1920, about 2 years, about a third of the world became contagious. That's a lot of people at that time. But it's interesting. What's really interesting is around 1919 to 1920 was when the Ku Klux Klan went from being very, very small, disorganized, kind of localized groups to developing chapters and an actual organizational structure, paid leaders, so on and so forth. And so this convergence of racism that follows isolation has occurred before. This is not new.
Well, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania originally, and the mayor is black, the police are black, the majority of citizens in the city are black, and I haven't seen any racism, but yet, tearing up the streets and breaking windows and running amok. And is this the result of many years of dumbing down America in government schools run by unionized Democrats, the so-called Department of Education, and unions?
I don't really think it's a dumbing down issue. I'm a sociobiologist, which is basically an evolutionary biologist by training. I look at evolutionary reasons that social trends occur. And the fact is that from an evolutionary standpoint, in our DNA, we have a mechanism where we are immediately fearful of things that look different from us, are foreign from us, and that's just a natural fear reaction that we have. we have that going back to prehistoric times when we would come across other tribes that looked different, behaved differently. We had a choice to either attack them and dominate them or be attacked and killed, right? Or the riskiest of all was to try to broker peace and harmony and assimilate with them.
But aren't we over that? I mean, as individuals...
So we have to understand that DNA heritage has not left our physiology.
But, I mean, as individuals, aren't we over that? I mean, I really didn't see any real racism. And I'm going to be honest with you. So I've been here 8 years in the South. I still see some remnants of it. But be honest with you, not up north. I mean, I really do not. And I've seen it here, even soft racism, or now we have soft tyranny. But in that, aren't we over it?
No, and we're not going to be over it for a long time because we keep dismissing the fact that there are certain very inconvenient and no longer useful human instincts which persist for millions of years. They don't cleanse out of our DNA because they're politically inconvenient.
Give me an example.
And
give me an example. Paint a picture for me.
I'm giving you an example. You see someone that's different from you, you have a physiological reaction. And the riskiest of all the decisions you can make is to decide that thing that is foreign to you. I mean, let me take my dog as an example. If you walk into my house and I have a very friendly and happy yellow lab dog, his tail immediately wags and he's very happy to see you. He's very friendly to all people and all other dogs. But if you are wearing a hat that is oddly shaped, the hair on the back of his neck comes up.
Yeah.
And he starts barking because he can't recognize the shape. You're no longer a human. You've got something large on your head, and he doesn't know what it is. And so what the self-protective mechanism that he has is to react differently, is to react cautiously.
Well, you know, they say birds of a feather.
All living organisms, I want to make the point that
Sure.
living organisms have this as a matter of their survival.
As they say, birds of a feather flock together. But I think for the most part in America, I know what you're saying, but I really believe we've managed to get beyond most of that. I mean, when I meet someone, I'm just telling you, I don't care what color they are. I don't care if they're fat, they're thin, male, female, old, young. I don't look at that. I really don't. Because I just see the body as a vessel that God put the spirit in. I really do not.
And yet sociologists do tests all the time that will prove that you have a racist instinct. I'll tell you one that I fell a victim to. It was a very simple one. It had faces, a bunch of faces of people. And they said, please match these names to these people. It was a very simple experiment, right? You walked into a room and there were lots and lots of pictures, and then they gave you names and you matched the names. Well, you know what? You tended to match names racially. Like the people whose names were Hakeem, you didn't give that to a white face, right? A white male. You didn't give, there were names that you associated, and even that was racially profiling.
Does the media have anything to do with this, with stereotyping?
There are very little subtle forms. Let me give you an example that's not racist, because that's always controversial, and everybody's quick to deny that they are. That they have any racial preferences or reactions. I often run across people that say, I don't follow what my DNA tells me. I'm a rational, very, very calm individual, and I don't have biases. And I tell them, okay, here's an experiment you can do. Go on into the grocery store, and instead of going up and down all the aisles, here's what you can do. Just go to the checkout stand, and there'll be people standing there with their grocery carts. And inside their grocery carts are everything you're going to buy anyway. So just shop out of their grocery carts. Just take the stuff out of their grocery carts and put it in yours. What do you suppose will happen?
If it's the South, they're going to say, bless your heart, and can I help you load your cart from my cart? If it's up north, they're probably going to cut your throat.
That's right.
Yeah.
The reaction is, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah, what are you doing? You
Well,
crazy?
Yeah, but you haven't paid for those things.
Right, so they're not
Until
yours
you
yet.
paid for them, they don't belong to you.
Right.
So just because they're in your grocery cart doesn't mean I can't go over and take them out of your cart.
Yeah, we got to take a break here, Rebecca.
But
Hold on.
imagine the frenzy.
All
And why is that?
All
Why
right, well, hold on. We're going to get to why it is after we get to this break.
So before we went to break, we were talking about, look, yeah, if you walk into a grocery store and walk up to someone's cart and start shopping out of it, even though they haven't paid for those goods and they don't belong to them, you're going to have a riot on your hands. They're going to call the manager. What can the manager do? You haven't broken any laws until you pay for the things in your cart.
And you're saying that's in our DNA.
That's in your DNA, and that reaction is completely irrational. You know it's irrational, but the reason that you react that way is because in the natural world, all of the food and water that you require to survive is within a territory that you must defend. And that is still in your DNA. It just translates from the wild and a physical territory in nature to a grocery cart. But the DNA, that instincts that you have, don't get cleansed just because you try to legislate them or you try to make people socially aware. You still will have these instincts. They'll just get more sophisticated in how they're expressed. And so what I want people to understand is that there's a genetic basis for racism, and just because you make laws and you defund the police and you protest and everything, it doesn't necessarily go away. But what you can do is you can educate people so that they can compensate for that. You have to actually compensate for natural instincts that no longer serve society or you.
Can I give an example
unfortunately, you can override that.
Right,
you can override those instincts.
Like, maybe here's an example. Half of my family are tall and thin. That's the genes they have. They can eat anything they want. I hate them. I hate them so much because they're tall and thin. My side comes from my grandfather's side, short and stout. And so, but I have to realize that I have to watch my caloric intake very much, or I could balloon up. So that has to be something on my conscious mind that if I don't, I can't blame my genes. I just have to say, if I want to maintain a certain weight, that I have to watch my caloric intake where they may not have to.
That's right. If you even look at a potato chip, you gain 10 pounds.
So Hershey bars. Hershey bars.
That's right.
I'll do tricks for a Hershey bar.
That you have to, but let me tell you a positive. Okay, I'm gonna give you a positive here. In earlier times, when there were massive food shortages, those human beings who could identify and were attracted to high calories, their DNA survived. Those that wanted to eat carrots and celery, they didn't make it. They don't roam the planet today because they didn't make it. And furthermore, those who didn't want to move around and waste those calories, who tended to be sedentary, they were able to preserve enough calories to reproduce and to generate further generations.
What are your views on vaccines?
So the tendency to be obese is not necessarily a bad thing in nature.
Right.
In nature, it can be essential to survival.
Vaccines, what is your view on vaccines?
Just that in those days, we didn't have a Starbucks with a deli case on every corner.
Well, I can tell you're a talk show host.
No, I'm just...
No, I say that, but we need to get you back. We need to get you back on the air, man.
It took as many calories to climb up a tree to get an apple as the apple gave you. And so there was a balance in calories, but now... there's a bag of potato chips and a donut everywhere you look.
All right. So what do you think about vaccines?
Well, the problem with vaccines is they don't work. In the entire history of humankind, we've only been able to eliminate one disease thanks to a vaccine.
Everyone, wait a second. Everyone's going, oh, my God. 98% recovery rate with coronavirus. 98% recovery rate. 98%. Get that number in your head. and everyone's waiting for the vaccine. And now you just told them they don't work. Why don't they work?
They don't work. I'm a scientist, and I'm telling you they don't work. And I'm going to tell you the things that the government should be saying, but they don't want to because they're afraid to scare people.
Why don't they work?
Let me give you a concrete example because
Sure.
you like facts. In 1984, when the AIDS virus was spreading like crazy and we didn't know how it was being spread. In fact, many of you will remember we thought if a mosquito bit somebody with AIDS and bit another person, we could transmit AIDS. We just had no idea. It was just like COVID-19.
Right.
And at that time, the head of the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services said, we're going to go all out on a vaccine for AIDS, right? And we're going to conquer this. I want to remind everyone that was 36 years ago, and we do not have a vaccine for AIDS. We're not good at keeping you from getting a disease. We never have been good at science at doing that. But what we are good at is keeping you from dying from something.
There you go.
And that's where you're going to see the progress.
Well, do you worry about people like Bill Gates, who has a lot of money invested in compelling people to be vaccinated in a situation whereby, and I think this is how it's going to come down. And listen, you're a sociobiologist. You tell me. I think if Walmart today said you will get a $50 coupon if you show up and get vaccinated, and there's a little tiny chip in that vaccination about the grain of size of a grain of sand, and in that chip is all of your data, whereby you can buy, sell, and trade, because we don't want that dirty money, Rebecca. We don't want that dirty money, right? We're going to take it out of your hands and put it in the hands of the state via the Federal Reserve. How many people do you think would volunteer for that vaccine, believing science, believing doctors, believing the media, and give up their individual freedom for the $50 and the vaccine, which is a placebo?
Well, I worry about that. I don't worry that vaccines don't work. I worry that people think they work.
Where have we come in this country, and how have we gotten here to the point where anything that comes out of anyone's mouth on the boob tube or anything they read in the leftist media, and I would say 98% of the publications are leftists, they're socialists or collectivists. They may not be hardcore Marxists, but even 95% of your Republicans are leftist collectivists, and they don't even know it. But from where does this come? Is it all the propaganda?
Everybody can have an opinion, and you can suspect things. You can put a minuscule amount of data together and reach some kind of conclusion. You're free to do so. But I am a scientist by training. I keep saying this because I don't really care if it's left or right. If you can't substantiate it with empirical data that's verifiable and reproducible, I'm not interested.
Let me throw something out to you, because science is empirical observation. And I know in Florida, the level of the water hasn't risen even a tenth of an inch in 10,000 years. And I know the weather is cyclical. I tend to believe, based on my own evidence, my scientific evidence of observation, that climate change and global warming is a big fraud with no science to support it. And I really don't know how you feel on this issue. I'm asking you this just off the cuff. What is your view?
I think we don't know. That's my view. And I get a lot of
honest.
flack from scientists that say, hey, no, it's proven, it's going on. I don't think anything's been proven. I think we don't know. But let me pose something different to you. In a situation where you don't know, and it could be life-threatening, wouldn't it be better to be safe than sorry?
Well, it all depends. I mean, I think global warming is a great thing. I mean, the ice caps don't do us any good. Let them melt. Let the earth get warmer. We'll have more growth. I think it's actually a good thing. I support global warming.
Yeah, but you got the flip side of that, and
What's that?
Is more disease,
more
human migration,
really?
and immigration problems. You got a
really?
whole set of negatives on the other side of that.
But here's what gets me. The dopey scientists say the water levels are going to rise. No, they're not. There's something called displacement. If you put ice in a glass of water and it melts, it doesn't overflow because the water's displaced. And why aren't they called out on this?
Okay, but that's my point exactly. We don't know with certainty. But as a scientist, I must say, if you are in an uncertain situation where things cannot be proven one way or another, and it is life-threatening, it is better to be cautious.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm holding up a pen here. This is a special pen that prevents elephants from entering the city of Chattanooga. So you need to buy this pen, to ensure you won't get stomped by an elephant. They're the climate change people. I always look at who benefits from it to find out the truth. And who benefits from it is the carbon credit people that want to guilt us into believing we have a carbon footprint. We need to pay for that to fix it. So we've got 1 minute and 42 seconds left, Rebecca. As a sociobiologist.
My point is
well, we got to go to this topic real quick. COVID-19.
Okay, COVID-19, don't count on a vaccine. If we do get a vaccine, it's only going to be about 15% effective, and it's not going to do you much good because there are 18 mutations that have already occurred, and we're not going to be able to get our arms around the mutations. That's number one. Number two, there are some studies that have just recently been posted about who's most vulnerable. If you are over the age of 80, you are 20 times more vulnerable than anyone on the age of 50 or under, and men are much more vulnerable than women. We know this because over 10,000 cases have been studied now over 3 months in Europe. So the data is coming in, and we're now beginning to isolate who is most vulnerable in our population, and I think we have to begin to make an accommodation for the most vulnerable. The rest of the people could go back to work and resume life as normal.
Rebecca, your website, how do we get a hold of you?
Very easy. www.RebeccaCosta.com. And read my articles. They're based on science.
www.RebeccaCosta. Spell that.
RebeccaCosta.
Yeah, you got to do that. You got to check out Rebecca. I miss you on the radio. We carried you for years. If you ever get back on, you let me know. We'll have a slot for you, okay?
Terrific. Happy to come on anytime.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. She is absolutely awesome. We used to carry her show, and she doesn't fall anywhere as far as left or right or whatever. She tells it as she believes it is. As a scientist, NoogaRadio 92.7. Have yourself a great weekend, and we will talk to you Monday.